If you're over 40 and thinking about starting a YouTube channel, big camera is going to convince you that you need a bag full of expensive gear before you're even allowed to hit the record button. Better camera, better lens, better lights, better mics. And next thing you know, you drop $2,000 just to figure out whether making videos is something that you even like. Strange how nobody selling the gear ever brings that part up. You might spend all of that cash putting together the perfect setup only to find out that you hate making videos. That is a brutal way to find out that you picked the wrong hobby. So today I'm testing out the DJI Osmo Action 6 as a studio camera. I know, crazy, right? Crazy. Now, before anybody starts having a stroke, no, I'm not saying that this is better than a mirrorless camera. All right, that's a different conversation entirely. I'm not saying that. I'm talking to the people who follow this channel, regular people, disabled or not, who want to start a YouTube channel. They aren't tech nerds, and they don't even know if they'll enjoy making videos yet. For those people, simplicity matters. They want one camera. What I want to know is whether this little thing is good enough to film a talking head video. Good enough that somebody who's been putting off starting a YouTube channel can finally stop obsessing over gear and start making videos. Everything you're watching right now, except for the shots showing off the Action 6 itself, were filmed on the Action 6. The product shots are coming from my Osmo Pocket 3, so you could actually see the setup, and I'll clearly mark those shots. So for this test, I've got the Action 6 sitting on a little desktop tripod right in front of me with the DJI Mic 2 connected. And honestly, that's about as complicated as this whole setup gets. The older I get, the less interested I am in equipment that turns a 10-minute video into a 6-hour production. If I have to spend half an hour setting everything up every time that I have an idea, there's a pretty good chance that that idea is never going to see the light of day. So today isn't really about proving that this is the best camera. It's about finding out whether this little camera is good enough to make you stop talking about starting a channel and actually starting the damn thing. No matter what kind of videos you want to do. These days, the gap between good enough and the best is a whole lot smaller than the YouTube influencers will have you believe. So here's the test. Can this little camera produce a talking head video that you'd actually be proud to upload? One that looks good and sounds good enough that nobody clicks away because of the camera. Because let's be honest, most people don't stop watching a YouTube video because the image wasn't cinematic enough. They leave because the video was boring. A good story filmed on a decent camera will beat out a boring story filmed on a $5,000 camera every day of the week and twice on Sunday. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how I have the Action 6 set up, the settings that I'm using, what I like, what I don't like, and whether I'd actually recommend it to somebody looking to start a YouTube channel. So let's start with the setup, and as you can see, there's not a lot to it. The Action 6 is sitting on a little desktop tripod right in front of me at about eye level. Right off the bat, I love that because there's no giant tripod legs taking over the room for me to run over. They're just a tiny camera pointed at my ugly mug. The audio is coming from the DJI Mic 2, which is right here, which pairs directly with the Action 6. I'll talk more about that setup in a minute. Now, the other piece of the setup that deserves some credit is the DJI Mimo app. Instead of leaning over the desk every time I want to check out my framing or change a setting, I can do it right from the phone. And that might not sound like a big deal until you record 10 minutes of video and realize you've been sitting off center the whole time. Ask me how I know. Now, let's talk about the settings for a minute. And listen, don't worry. This isn't going to turn into one of those videos where I spend 20 minutes explaining every menu option that DJI ever came up with. This is not that video. These are simply the settings that work for me. I'm shooting in 4K at 30 frames per second using a standard 16:9 aspect ratio. Since the camera isn't moving, I don't need the stabilization cranked up, all the way to 10. All right, I'm not doing action here. I'm sitting still. And I lock in my white balance and exposure so the image stays consistent from start to finish. That's really it. And honestly, you could probably just leave the thing in auto and get just as good a video. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people make is thinking that they have to master every camera setting before they're qualified to make a video. You don't. Will you make mistakes? Yeah, of course you will, okay? But so did everybody else. And the difference is that they had the balls to make those mistakes on camera instead of spending 3 months watching YouTube tutorials. Your first video isn't supposed to be perfect. You'll learn more from making 10 shit videos than you ever will memorizing camera settings. Start with settings that look good to your eye, make the video, then tweak things as you go. That's a whole lot more productive than chasing perfection before you've even uploaded video number 1. Now let's talk about lighting for a minute. A camera could only work with the light that you give it. And that's true whether it costs $300 or $3,000. This is the part where you have to put a little effort in, okay? Action cameras notoriously work better with more light. So for this setup, I'm using an Amaron 60D key light right here with the softbox off to the left, and it's at about 40%, 45% power. And to the right of me, I have another Amaron 60D with a softbox at about 15% to fill in my painfully below average face. It's nothing fancy. Since this is my first time doing this too, I just want to give the camera enough light to do its job. I have a cheap $20 panel light back here I got from Amazon working as a hair light, and then my usual hipster doofus RGB lights behind me for atmosphere. Here's what the Action 6 looks like without the lights. Now here's the exact same camera with the lights turned back on. Big difference, right? That's why I always tell people, if you got a limited budget, I'd rather see you buy a decent camera and one good light than blow your entire budget on a camera body. All right, nobody needs the FX5 if they're making YouTube videos. The camera gets all the attention, but the lights do most of the work. And that's one of those lessons that you only learn after you wasted enough money to learn it the hard way. Now let's talk about the audio, because people will forgive mediocre video, but they will not forgive bad audio. For this video, I'm using the DJI Mic 2, and this is one of those setups that just makes sense. Turn on the camera, turn on the microphones. A few seconds later, they're paired up, they're connected. That's it. No receiver hanging off the side of the camera. This isn't GoPro. No cable running across the desk. No wondering whether you plugged something into the wrong hole. Man, I did that once. Cost a week-long fight. I've owned enough gear over the years to know that every extra step is another opportunity for something to go wrong. The simpler the setup, the more likely I am to use it. Now, could I get away with the built-in microphones? Yeah, probably. All right, but the microphone should always be as close to your face as possible. And if people can't clearly hear what you're saying, they're not going to stick around long enough to admire your image quality. So for me, the Mic 2 was worth every penny. Now here's something obvious, but it needs to be said. The easier it is to make a video, the more videos you make. If every recording session feels like you're setting up for a Netflix documentary, eventually you'll start saying, yeah, I'll do that tomorrow. Tomorrow turns into next week, then next month, and then never. I'm not saying that everybody needs to simplify their setup. I'm saying that if your setup is becoming an excuse not to make something, it's probably time to rethink it. For me, that's where the Action 6 really surprised me, because it just gets out of the way. And honestly, that's one of the best compliments I could give any piece of gear. Now, if you watch this channel for any length of time, you know that I'm not here to tell you every piece of gear is perfect. The Action 6 definitely has its limitations. The lens is pretty wide. I mean, you could see that, all right? You'll have to do some cropping in post. And if you get too close, your face starts looking a little fat. It makes your face look fat, okay? Trust me, I don't need the camera doing me any favors in that department. And if you're chasing that super shallow depth of field where the background melts into a creamy little blur, this camera ain't gonna do it. I mean, physics is physics, man. A larger sensor and a faster lens is always gonna win that fight. But here's the thing, none of those limitations stop me from making this video. No, not one. Once I started paying attention to my lighting and got the framing where I wanted it, I stopped thinking about the camera altogether. I started thinking about the video. And that's exactly where your focus should be. At some point, the camera has to disappear because your audience isn't showing up to admire your sensor size. They're showing up because you had something worth saying. And if you got that, the camera becomes a whole lot less important. So would I recommend the Action 6 as a studio camera? Yeah, sure, why not? Because I think this camera is good enough to work as a daily driver no matter what type of videos that you plan on making. Are there better options out there? Yeah, a whole lot of them. The Insta360 Luna and even the DJI Pocket 3 would probably do better, but they're more fragile and they cost more money. Am I gonna make it my full-time setup here and have it replace my Sony? No, of course not. But with a decent light, good audio, and something worth talking about, I think most people watching this video could build a YouTube channel with the Action 6 and never feel like gear was the thing that was holding them back. If you just want to decide if you like making videos, get the Action 6, man. All right, you could always upgrade later. But if you buy the Pocket 4 or Luna first and realize a month from now that you hate making videos, that's a pretty expensive lesson. Listen, I hope this video helped out somebody. And thanks again for watching, guys. And until next time, stay loud, stay a little bit reckless, and go out and make something.